welcome to EllieMD's live educational series. I am Honey Sagari, CEO and founder of EllieMD, and tonight I have my co-host Lauren Ashir, who will join us to talk to Dr. Fate all about sleep. We're just so glad you've decided to join us. At EllieMD, we're redefining telehealth by creating a space for meaningful conversations, science-driven insights, and guided support that empower you to take charge of your health and longevity. Today's conversation is focused on sleep recovery and the critical role they play in our overall health, longevity, and performance. To help guide us, we're excited to welcome Dr. Eric Fate, a leader in preventative health, age management, and peak performance medicine.
Dr. Fate is the founder of PrimeX, where he focuses on helping individuals optimize vitality, longevity, and performance through personalized health strategies, hormone optimization, and advanced therapies. With a background in microbiology and a medical degree from the Chicago College of Osteopathic Medicine, he brings a deep understanding of how health is influenced at the cellular and metabolic level. His approach is rooted in a powerful philosophy: learning from the past, living for today, and transforming the future.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Fate. Thank you, Dr. Eric. Thank you for being here. To start, why don't you share a little about yourself, your background, how you got into this? Tell us about Primex and how many years you've been studying peptides or doing functional health. Just share us a little about yourself.
Yeah, well, thank you, ladies. I appreciate it was very gracious of you to have me on your show, and I appreciate the opportunity. So hopefully I can provide some value for listeners and have a little fun and chuckles along the way. So yeah, I'll keep it short and sweet. I'm a big superhero guy, so I always say like, what's your secret origin story? And Ellie has your secret origin story. I have mine. We all do. Everybody does. But I have always been involved in health and fitness, been an athlete my whole life, and always enjoyed science. So went to medical school, and I went through the traditional route, right? I was an ER doctor for many years, so I saw all kinds of crazy stuff and did all kinds of crazy procedures and had a lot of fun, had a lot of stories. But I started seeing, unfortunately, people at their worst too. When you start seeing people in their 30s and 20s and 40s on 20 different medications and disabled and overweight, and all this could have been prevented with healthy lifestyle and some simple life changes. I thought, oh my gosh, this could have all been prevented. And I'm talking to people about how to work out and how to eat and all this. Well, I'm in the ER, I'm trying, but it wasn't the place. So I got into the preventive health side, and I kind of basically I took a different circuitous route, but I had a brick and mortar clinic with another doctor, and we were doing like cosmetic surgical procedures and anti-aging and stem cell treatments and PRP therapy. Then we started getting into, and I started learning about hormone therapy, and I got trained and certified in advanced bioidentical hormone therapy with some of the top leaders in the world about it. And I've been doing that for, gosh, I don't even know now, well over 12, 15 years, something like that. And then probably pre-COVID, over almost 10 years now, I've been involved with some of the best minds in the world about peptides. We started doing it and talking about it, having conferences before it was really a hot topic. Again, this is pre-COVID when it was just kind of just coming out. So everything you're hearing about now, we were kind of delving into it and talking about it and start playing around with it a little bit. And so now I do pretty much all telemedicine too, and I work from home, but I've got patients all across the country, and I spend a lot of time with them doing with my company called PrimeX, where it's all about peak performance and health optimization. And I kind of have a top-down approach in getting to the root cause of it and figuring out what's going on, how I can optimize their health and fitness. And I touch on everything with them, whether it's, sleep, life, diet, nutrition, exercise, supplementation, hormone therapy, and peptide therapy, whatever it takes to kind of rebuild things. And it's really about treating them at the cellular level. A lot of traditional medicine and even a lot of functional medicine is kind of just throwing band-aids at the problem, throwing pills at it, or, fad diets and things that don't work. You really got to peel back the layers of the onion and figure out why they're having the symptoms and fix that underlying cause. And that's kind of what I do. So it's kind of where I'm at today. And so now today, apparently, we're going to have fun talking about sleep. It's a huge
That's
topic. I'm
right.
glad you brought it up because it's one of the big ones. Sleep and stress are the two big things that I deal with a lot of my patients, and I'm sure you do too. So I'm glad we're talking about it.
Thank you. Well, everything you said is what we stand for here at Ellie. That's our philosophy. Let's get to the root cause of disease and problems. And we've created this beautiful community around it too. And as you can see, these are all of our community members. So
Yeah.
thank you guys for tuning in and wanting to learn and educate yourself and be an advocate for yourself and your loved ones and everyone. So let's talk about sleep to start with. Why is sleep important? What happens when we sleep? What are the phases of sleep? Tell us everything there is to know
Yeah.
about sleep, longevity, and its benefits.
Wow. Yeah, well, that's like an hour discussion right there, but I'll keep it short and sweet. Sleep is like everything. It's like in between, sleep and exercise, it's like amazing in terms of superpowers, right? It's like I tell everybody, I said, I can have the magic pill to make you Superman or Superwoman, but if you're not sleeping, it's not going to work. You have to sleep. You have to have quality sleep. And, we'll talk about that. But so basically, at night has been when kind of like your system, your computer turn off. That's when it reboots. So it's when it heals. That's when it recovers. So, the people that are not doing it, you're missing out on a lot. So, this is why we were talking at the beginning about consistency, and especially, and I'm big into circadian rhythms and kind of blending the old and new, the wisdom of the ancients and their strategies about sunlight and getting outside and same, dimming the lights at night, et cetera, aligning your circadian rhythms with nature is something we've lost track of nowadays. Everybody's plugged in 24/7 in front of blue light all the time, and it's messing up your rhythms, it's messing up their sleep. So, getting to bed when it's dark, nine, typically, roughly 10 o'clock, and then getting up with the sun. That's what we should be doing. Obviously, there's a little bit of flexibility there, but in general, at nighttime is when obviously your body repairs. You have what's called glymphatic drainage, when your brain is literally draining out all the toxins and kind of pulling out all the bad stuff and helping it heal to recover. You're consolidating all your memories that you learned that day. Your brain is recovering. It's a very active time, even though we're sleeping, our brain and our body is very active. The brain is healing, it's recovering, it's clearing out drainage, it's consolidating memories and keeping everything, building new synaptic connections to facilitate, basically consolidate everything you've learned. All your hormones are optimized during the night. That's when you get a peak of growth hormone, your testosterone, all these other hormones. Melanin starts to do its thing. Leptin starts to do its thing. And all these little hormones are very important for recovery, for basically optimal body composition, optimal health. People that are obviously, everybody's trying to like lose weight and lose fat and improve their health, but that starts at night. And if you're not sleeping, you're missing out on all those hormonal changes that can facilitate that. Um, so and again, it's also going to help with your glucose and your insulin surges during the day. So that's why you hear all the time when people are not sleeping. That's why they're always craving cookies and junk the next day. Their cortisol stress hormones are out of whack. Their insulin's out of whack. They're eating bad foods, and then it's making it worse, and it's fueling the fire, and it's a vicious cycle. So you got to get the sleep in because that's when your body heals. Everybody who's on the call who works out and exercises, again, you're doing things during the day. What you're at night, that's when your tissues are healing, your muscles are growing, your tendons are recovering from your CrossFit workout, right? Or whatever it is you're doing. So from your brain to your muscles to your organs, everything is recovering, healing, and rebooting for the next day. So that's why sleep it's a non-negotiable with my patients and with everybody. If you got to get that dialed in, along with stress. Those are the two big ones. Like I talked about superheroes, like Superman with the big red ass. I got the double S, the sleep and stress. Those are the two big ones that we're dealing with today in society with all the craziness in the world and technology and everything. It's easy to forget and just get wigged out by stress and being on your computer all night, all evening, and then not sleeping and being stressed some more, and you're just creating a bad situation. So,
Mm.
sleep has to be top at your list of anything you're going to do health related. So,
I
hopefully,
saw someone write, sleep is just as important as nutrition, and that is 100% correct. Yes.
absolutely.
For the purposes of terminology and just so we could wrap our head around what happens during those phases of sleep, can you identify the different phases of sleep and what typically happens during
Yeah,
them?
for sure. It's a great question. So typically there's class, I mean, it's a little bit of a nuance, but classically there's like four stages, right? There's like one through three, and one is kind of like you're light, you're kind of zoned out, just kind of barely asleep. Your brain's starting to slow way. If you did an EEG where they're measuring your brain waves, they're getting out of that beta wave state and they're starting to get into alpha, theta, gamma, all these different waves of kind of slowing down. Stage two is more of a moderate deep sleep where you're starting to recover, you're starting to drift, and stage three is what they call the deep sleep, right? That's where you're really getting into recovery. Your hormones are starting to get dialed in. They're starting to peak and flow. And then the last stage is REM sleep, or rapid, which stands for rapid eye movement, where typically your body is almost literally paralyzed, but your eyes are moving and flitting around. And that's when your memories are getting consolidated. Your cognitive function is taking path. Everything you learned is kind of sticking, so to speak, as opposed to being floating around. And some people argue what's more important, deep sleep or REM sleep. Well, they're both important. They both have different functions, and typically, and throughout the night, you're going to wax and wane a little bit. You're going to come out of REM and deep and go into, two or three, back to four and down, back to REM. And you go through these cycles. They typically last anywhere from like 45 minutes to an hour and a half. And you're going to rotate through those cycles. That's why if you'd ever, anybody's on the call, if you've ever like woken up in the middle of a REM, you got woken up, you're kind of drowsy, you're kind of out of it because you're in that deep sleep. But if you're in like stage one or two and you get woken up, you feel pretty darn good. So, and it's also timing in general. Again, there's exceptions, but the first half of the night is when you're really getting that, stage three, and the last half is the REM sleep. So a lot of people that are like staying up till like midnight, 1 in the morning, they're missing out on those deeper stages. Whereas on the flip side, if they're getting up way too early, then they might be cutting off their REM sleep. So it's important that you have a little bit of balance. And again, there's, all the talk in the studies where people are like, what's your sleep chronotype? People maybe have heard of like, they call it like the wolves or the dolphins and all these, they have all these little catchphrases like, are you like a night owl and an early bird, that kind of thing. There is some nuance to that, but in general, like I said, keep it, for me, I just like to keep it simple. It's kind of like, sun goes down, once it's dark, go to bed. When you get up with the sun, 10 to 5, 10 to 6, somewhere in that range is usually a good starting point. But again, you're going to cycle through those, and that's why it's important not just to be consistent at the time of day, try to go to bed at the same time and get up at the same time. But we can talk about, I can talk about later, but light is very important, how you stimulate that in terms of like night, getting dark at night and stimulating your brain at night, first thing in the morning with the sunlight. But those rhythms are very important. But it's also about staying asleep. And I think you mentioned that earlier too. People that are waking up a lot or frequent times, I see this a lot with my women who are in menopause, or people that have a lot of stress issues, or they're trying to cut a lot of weight and they're waking up because their blood sugar is dropping. Again, if you're waking up multiple times through the night, you're throwing that rhythm off and you're getting out of sync. So it's not only important just the whole time, but that's kind of staying asleep. And obviously, it's okay to wake up once or twice. That's kind of normal. But if you're waking up, 4, 5, 10 times, it's not. And then we need to figure out why and try to fix that.
Mm.
And as we age, how does that affect, what stages we spend more time in? I hear as people get older, they get worse and worse sleep.
It's true. Yeah, a lot of people are like that. Some studies have indicated that, like, as we get older, we tend to have less deep sleep, and sometimes less REM sleep too. So it's very important to try to do everything you can to maximize that. And then sometimes it's very difficult, but that's also, it tends to be shorter cycles as well. So a lot of times as people get older, they tend to not have as spend as much time in those deeper stages. People, you hear about people being lighter sleepers, being awakened very easily or more frequently, and that's why.
And besides age, are there other factors? You mentioned blue light. What other factors affect sleep? I know there's some people that take a shot of espresso before they go to bed and they sleep fine, but some people
Right.
can't drink coffee, a few hours before. Like, what other factors affect quality of sleep?
Yeah, stress is a big one. Mindsets, like, that whole thing. Food, of course, nutrition is big, right? Trying not to eat a few hours before bed, because if you have your belly and your gut is trying to metabolize everything in your belly, you're taking away from fuel and blood flow to the other parts of your brain. It can't get into those deep stages. So food is important. Yeah, coffee, alcohol, tobacco, um,
Mm.
um, any drug for that matter, are big. Alcohol definitely disrupts your sleep tremendously. Caffeine, yeah, like you said, there's always those exceptions. People that can drink a coffee and go and pass out. I think they're probably the exceptions, not the rule. I can't do that, but most for in general, yeah, that can definitely throw that off. If you're drinking coffee too much or too late in the day, alcohol can definitely do it. Yes, people will say, "Oh, it knocked me out." Well, yeah, but you're not getting that deep sleep. Pills, medications, can do that too, right? There's a lot of pills that people take to kind of quote unquote sleep, but they're not really getting that deep sleep or that restorative sleep. That it kind of knocks them out, but they're not actually, if you look at their brain waves, they're not really getting that deep restorative sleep, which is why a lot of people are like, yeah, I slept 9 hours, but I feel kind of blah. I don't feel very good. Well, that's probably why. So, those are probably the biggest ones. So, light, food, activity. If you're like doing a hit workout, 8 o'clock, and then you're going to bed at 9, you're gonna be a little wired up. So, activity. That's why I always stress the importance of like a wind down routine. You're really chilling out, calming down, getting your temperature nice and cool, calming the brain down, turning off all your devices, reading, doing something kind of restorative, whether it's meditation or prayer or reading a book or deep breathing and breath work, things like that, to kind of just get your mind, get your brain out of that go mode, right? Get off your darn phone, get off the Netflix. Don't be watching a horror show or scanning, Facebook, right before bed. That's probably not the best thing, from not just from the light and the blue light, but from a stimulatory effect too. So.
Can you touch on growth hormone and sleep, its effect on sleep? or what happens during sleep and I mean, you briefly touched on it, but can you touch on
Yeah.
growth? Because someone wrote about Sermorelin
Mhm.
and sleep. So can you touch on that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. Whoever asked that, it's very important because, as I mentioned, during sleep is when your growth hormone peaks, starts to ramp up, around, 11, 12 o'clock. So that's why I'm saying those people are staying up really late. They're missing out on that growth hormone production. And growth hormone actually can facilitate deeper sleep too, especially REM sleep and even deep sleep. So it does help with that those later sleep stages. People that especially people that are older that are losing that, it can help facilitate that. So growth hormone, you want to optimize that because it's not only going to facilitate that deeper sleep, but help you with your metabolism, improving insulin sensitivity is going to help you. Guess what you do during the night? You're not eating, you're fasting, and it's helping the process of lipolysis or burning your fat. So everybody's wanting to lose weight. That's the best time. You're literally burning fat while you sleep. So the more the better your anabolic hormones like testosterone, growth hormone, you're going to burn more fat. And you're going to rebuild your muscle tissue from your workouts from that day. So it's very important to keep your growth hormone optimized. There's a lot of ways to do that, but definitely getting sleep and not eating before bed is key. So when you have a big meal and then you crash like an hour later, well, that's cranking up your insulin, that's turning off your growth hormone, and it's affecting it in an adverse way. It's affecting your leptin pathways, which is also adversely affecting that. So leptin is very important to signal all the other hormones, including growth hormone, to do the right things. So if you're eating before bed, you're exercising, you're doing all these things, you're adversely affecting your growth hormone. That's very, very important for sleep, for recovery, and for healing of your body in general.
Mm.
And why is deep sleep so important for the body to recover and kind of optimize the health?
Yeah, because that's when you're literally rebuilding, whether even if you don't work out or whatever you do, your tendons, your ligaments, your muscles, everything is kind of rebuilding. It's healing. The cells are going through a process called autophagy, where they're breaking down and getting rid of the old damaged cells and rebuilding. So if you're not getting that, or if you're pulling all-nighters and this and that, you're not recovering. So and then you go back to the gym the next day, you're going to be sore. You're going to eventually cause injury because you're not physically recovering. Literally, it's like building that wall, and then you're literally ripping apart the mortar from the between the bricks in the middle of the night when you're supposed to be putting that mortar in place. So, and it's also, like I said, very important for the brain health to heal, for the toxins to drain out of the brain for your brain to recover itself and make all those connections and to heal, and so you can consolidate memories and learn pathways and grow. And as you're learning things, you're reading books, you're taking courses, and you're not going to remember things if your brain's not doing that. So that's why it's very important for that too.
So like many people, I track my sleep on my Aura ring, and
Mhm.
I have another ring, and I've got my watch, and I'm tracking these things, and I get a really bad score on latency usually because I fall asleep immediately. And you would think that's a great thing, like she's tired, she's going to sleep, but there's an issue and a problem with falling asleep immediately. Apparently, it's like too much stress. Can you touch on that? And I also want to touch on, I mean, do you mind touching
Yeah, yeah.
on that phase, that
And
initial primary phase of falling asleep?
yeah, and then there's a lot of people that I don't even wear mine anymore. I tell a lot of people to stop wearing them. They're great, but they're not perfect, but they're good. But a lot of people get hung up on them, and then it starts becoming a stressor in and of themselves. The first thing they do when they get up, they look at their scores, and they're stressing themselves out, and that can be a negative feedback loop. So don't do that. So sometimes take a break from it and just go by how you feel. Um, but that being said, yeah, if you're late in sleep, Leanne said, that's me. Leanne, take the ring off for a while. Um, so late, yeah, if you should be going to sleep pretty quickly. Now, yeah, you're right. If you're like immediately hitting the head, your head's hitting the pillow, you're out. Maybe you ran a little too far that you did too much that day. You're kind of exhausted, and that's probably not good. But in general, you do want to, 5, 10, 15 minutes, something like that. But if obviously you don't want the opposite either. You're laying in bed for 45 minutes. But if you're crashing right away, maybe take a look at your day and look at other parameters. How do you feel? How's your mood? How's your sex drive? How's your energy? Everything else. Look at everything else in terms of throughout the day, during the day, at night, things like that. But it's important to track it. And again, none of them are perfect, but it's good to vacillate through those stages like we were talking about. So,
Mm.
did that answer your question about the
No,
late?
it did.
Okay.
And I do want to touch on for people who have difficulty sleeping, what is typically happening? Let's assume there's no stress. I can't go to bed. And let's talk about the typical modalities of helping people fall asleep, like Ambien and other
Mhm.
melatonin. Let's talk about how they work and what's their
Yeah.
mechanism of action. If you could touch on that.
Yeah, I mean, I can talk a lot about because not only I have a lot of patients to deal with, but personally have had a lot of sleep issues, and I've tried probably every product device medication technique out there. So there's a lot of reasons, and I think we're in a kind of what I alluded to earlier, where number one, our circadian rhythms are out of whack. We're stressed. Everybody's working. We're doing stuff. So stress is a big one. Circadian rhythm malalignment is a big one. Those are, medications, menopause, diet, exercise, medication side effects. There's a lot of things that are affecting our sleep. So something kind of comes down to getting down to basics. I always like to start with the free stuff, just like I was talking earlier, like kind of just turning off the devices, getting that kind of wind down routine. I love to do what I call a brain dump. Write down everything that's on your mind that you're worried about, you're stressed about, your to-do list for the next day. Write it all down, and then either keep it or just throw it away. It literally kind of purges yourself. Breath work is a really cool thing to do too, whether it's box breathing or 4-5-7 breathing, meditation, prayer, fantastic, journaling, whatever you need to do. Nice cool dark room, and I'm a big fan of like more natural treatments. Some people, most people are deficient in magnesium, so I pretty much have everybody on magnesium. It helps with sleep. And there's other natural supplements, nutraceuticals I recommend too, depending on what's going on with them, to help. So those are some easy things to do. And like I said, then, the biggest thing is like that blue light at night. Get off the devices, or at least put them in a red light mode, or get some blue blockers. The thing that people forget about often too is the beginning of the day. In the beginning of the day, one of the first things you should be doing is getting out and looking at the sun. Even if it's cloudy, you're getting it, and people are like, "Oh my gosh, you can do that." That actually your night. It'll actually facilitate your sleep that night. It doesn't make sense, but when you look at the sun, it's actually going through your retina and it's turning on these little receptors and literally going to your brain. It's managing your cortisol, your leptin, and you're actually starting the process of melatonin production for that evening for when you sleep. So it gets everything in sync. So, and getting outside as much as you can is going to be very helpful for that as well. So, sun in the morning, dark at night, and it sounds ridiculously silly, but it works. And it's free, right? So it's an easy one. So, it on the flip side, medications and things you hear about, and of course you go somewhere and you get prescribed an Ambien or a trazodone or whatever. I'm not a big fan of these because they knock you out, but they don't always give you the best deepest restorative sleep, and there's side effects associated with them. Like in a pinch, periodically, sure, but in general, no. Melatonin is fine. I mean, I use a more of an extended release melatonin product from a company that I like that has a really good product. I don't use it all the time, but it's a great one. But I always like I said, start with the free stuff, the cold, the dark, the brain dump, supplementation, things like that. There's a lot of other cool things out
Shower.
there. What's that?
A hot shower. That
Hot
seems to work
shower.
okay.
Yeah, some people
Yeah.
like hot, some people like cold at night, which is
Mm,
counterintuitive, but some people it works really well.
really.
But I like the warm before bed. Some people like to do like I've done a sauna or like a hot shower before bed is great. They have those devices like the Ooler and all these like cooling devices, cooling blankets and things like that. There's PEMF mats. These are getting more to the expensive things, but that can kind of stimulate, certain, restorative aspects of sleep and things like that. Those are more on the pricey sides, but some people have tried them and they work. I've tried them. They didn't really do much for me, but again, everybody's different.
Okay,
Uh,
so let's talk about an Ambien and melatonin we mentioned. How do they work? How do they work on the body and how do they affect sleep?
Yeah, so melatonin, I mean, our bodies, of course, make melatonin at night. It's supposed to. That's what we're going to talk about with DSIP is how it stimulates that. And there's some other peptides that can help with sleep too by enhancing your body's own endogenous melatonin production. So it's a natural hormone made in our brain, a little gland called the pineal gland, and it's supposed to come out at night, right? And that's what helps us to sleep. Now you can take melatonin, and especially as we get older, we tend to, just like a lot of our hormones and our natural peptides, we stop making as much. So sometimes we have to supplement with that, and it can be helpful as long as you get a quality product. Like I said, I like the extended release formulation. The other ones tend to wear off a little bit quickly. Ambiens and the other ones are a little bit different. They're more of a sedative kind of mechanism, and it's more of an artificial inducement of sleep. And yeah, they knock you out, but the problem is they're rife with side effects, and they can be very addictive, really. I've seen a lot of patients who've been hooked on them, and then they can't get off. And when they try to get off, they have a horrible time getting through it. My father is a prime example that had a hard time. I know some friends of mine who had a really difficult time. They couldn't get off it, and it took them months, some even years to get back to normal after being off it. So it's something that it's like yes, if you use it once or twice, a couple times a year for an emergency situation or something, yeah, sure. But on a regular basis, it's more of an artificial inducement. It's really not getting you in that nice, deep, restorative sleep. And it's causing a lot of side effects, whether it's grogginess, sedation, night walking, night terrors, addiction to it, things like that. So that's why I tend not to recommend those very often.
Okay, well. That segues us into our conversation about DSIP. Where
Yeah.
does DSIP come in? What is it? How does it work? How does it affect deep sleep? Let's tell us everything you know
Yeah, for
about DSIP.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, peptides are great. I mean, there's so many that can help with sleep. I mentioned the growth hormone peptides are fantastic for sleep and other things. I've used epitalin and pineolon, even C-Lank for things that people, especially the people that have a lot of stress and anxiety, things like. So there's a ton of peptides out there. DSIP is kind of cool because it's more of an indirect action. It does a lot of things. So one of the first things it does is what's called it modulates your cortisol. It's kind of like a lot of the other peptides. It's more of a signaling molecule. It kind of balances things out. It can balance out the HPA axis. What I mean by that is more or less think of like cortisol, your stress hormone. It starts with there's a hormone called corticotropin or ACTH. It's made in the brain and makes your body make more cortisol. It can kind of balance that out. So people that are have a elevated cortisol response, maybe they're stressed or going through some crazy stuff at work or personal life, or they're just pardon the French, but balls to the wall all day long, and they just can't sleep. They can't turn off. This can be very helpful to kind of tone down that stress response. And when you're lowering those cortisol spikes, that's going to help with sleep. That's going to help you recovery. It's going to help you stay awake because a lot of people that are waking up in the middle of the night have a little burst of cortisol because of stress or because of drop in blood sugar, things like that. DSIP also modulates these what are called adrenergic receptors in the pineal gland I was talking about earlier with melatonin. There's a little enzyme called N-acetyltransferase, I believe, and it helps create melatonin. So it actually can help your body make more of its own melatonin naturally, which is what's going to help you go to sleep and stay asleep. So this is a little different. It's kind of like the growth hormone peptides. It makes your body release more of its own growth hormone. The DSIP kind of stimulates your body to kind of release its own natural melatonin more in a more natural way. DSIP also can kind of enhance GABA, which is another neurotransmitter in your brain that's a calming neurotransmitter. So it can help with that stress response and kind of downregulate that and kind of make you feel a little more chill, a little more relaxed. And DSIP can also stimulate the release of, we have actual natural opioids in our brain called metenkephalins. So most people think of opioids like Vicodin and stuff. It's not that kind, but it's a similar chemical property. But again, our brain naturally makes these enkephalins, and these can help with anxiolysis, meaning breaking down the anxiety or making you feel calm. They have some analgesic properties, so someone's in pain or having, or for whatever reason, it can help modulate that, which is of course is going to help you stay asleep. If you're feeling a little bit better, less pain, less anxiety, you're going to sleep better. And the other cool thing with DSIP is that it can actually help with gonadotropin release and luteinizing hormone, which it can actually stimulate testosterone a little bit. This is great for guys. It has a kind of an indirect effect on this as well. I don't know how powerful that is. I've never really tracked testosterone levels specifically for this peptide, but it's in the literature, it's out there. So it's not anything that's necessarily a bad thing. So it's kind of a cool little thing that can do. And it's also a natural antioxidant. A DSIP can kind of has some natural antioxidant properties, which is very important. Melatonin is also an extremely powerful antioxidant. So it's kind of a double whammy. It's helping turn off a lot of those oxidation of cells in your brain, from different things, if from food you have eaten or if you're exposed to, you're on a plane ride exposed to a lot of Wi-Fi and EMF or whatever, we're exposed to oxidants all the time. So it's a great way to tone down that and stimulate that antioxidant effect. So it works on the sleep in a lot of different ways. And the name of it is DSIP, right? Deep sleep inducing peptide, right? That's the name. So it's the whole point of it is to induce that deep sleep. So people that don't get into that deep sleep, it helps with that. And the data is, it's helped a lot of people. It's mixed. There's a lot of studies that say it doesn't really do much. There's some that says it helps. And I've had patients that it's helped, and I've had patients that said it didn't do anything. It's kind of like that with everything. All peptides, medication. I'm a prime example. I mean, I've tried probably everything out there, and I don't feel much of anything. So I don't know why. That's just me. But other people absolutely love it, and they feel great. So there is a little bit of a dose response, and there's a little timing effect. If you look at some of the studies that actually this peptide is made, it actually peaks in the afternoon and actually drops in the evenings. But most people want to get in deep sleep at night. So that's why a lot of these peptides, you take them before bed. But some people don't respond. It's a paradoxical response, and some people actually have to take it earlier in the day, in the afternoon, to sleep at night. It doesn't make sense, but for some reason, that's the way that it works. But and again, the dosage, man, it's not something you do all the time. Most people will do it maybe 2 or 3 times a week for a period of time, and then take a break. But that's the whole point of it. And again, that's the name to help induce that deep sleep. So those people that are having the problems with the deep sleep. So that's what makes it kind of cool. That just like all the peptides, they're natural. minimal side effects, and they can help do things in a more of a natural circadian fashion as opposed to taking pills or taking, sleeping medicine where it's going to knock you out, that kind of thing.
Mm.
Whew, that was a lot. So I'm sure a
I
lot of
know,
questions.
no, it's really, really good. Thank
And I
you.
apologize
Thank
if
you
I talk
for,
fast. I
no,
get excited and I talk
that was
fast. So.
perfect. That was perfect. Someone wrote, Sarah Bleakley, you Sarah Bleakley from Spanx. She wrote, I've been using tesamorelin, ipamorelin for a month, and I've been sleeping better than I've slept in years. I'm assuming it's from the peptide because I haven't done anything different. What would be the biggest differentiator between tesamorelin and DSIP?
So testosterone is a growth hormone releasing hormone. So it basically stimulates your brain to release and produce and release more growth hormone. And remember at the beginning of the conversation, that's one of the things that it does. It does help potentiate that REM sleep and that deep sleep. So in that regard, it's very similar to DSIP. DSIP just does it in a little bit of a different fashion and has those other effects too, especially modulating cortisol, stimulating GABA, stimulating those natural and endorphins. So it does it in a little different fashion, whereas the testosterone and the other growth hormone peptides are more just specifically priming the brain into that deep stage sleep. So, and I've had a lot of patients who've told me the same thing. They feel they slept really good on it. So I'm not surprised she said that. It can definitely be a game changer in that regard.
Mhm.
Mm.
Since DSIP is not a sedative and doesn't work, like typical Ambien or benzo, can someone take DSIP with these medications or would it be an alternative?
You could. I would not. I would think, especially if you're trying to make a change, is sometimes if you're doing two or three things that do the same, it can be hard to differentiate like what's working and what's not. So I would start with one, and then you can always blend in something else later and add to it and see how it works together.
Good.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
How does it affect brain function? Like, how would someone feel in the middle of the night or waking up after taking this injection versus someone who may take an Ambien at night?
That's a good question. You're not going to feel anything adverse because it's really augmenting and enhancing your natural sleep pathway. So it just be like if you're in a deep sleep on your own and you woke up, you're not going to wake up groggy or drooling or anything weird. Unfortunately, like with some of the sleeping, like the Ambien, sometimes you can't. It really puts you out deeply, and some people have like, you know, parasomnias and night, sleepwalking and different things like that. So it's gonna be very different in that regard. I think the DSIP is really good for people that are really stress driven. They've got a lot of hypercortisolism from whatever, from psychological stress, or they're just worn out, or their circadian rhythms off. So people like that are traveling a lot, shift workers, things like that. People who have developed tolerance to, like, if they've been on a benzo or an Ambien or something for a long time, and now they're kind of tolerant to it, their GABA system's all messed up. Or people that have done like CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, or done some other things, and they're looking for the next step. So there's some people that might benefit from trying this peptide. If they're struggling with any of those things, that can definitely help. Like, think of those pathways I was talking about. If you're having one of those things that's triggering that, the stress, the pain, circadian dysregulation, then that might be one to try for you.
Can you develop a dependency on this, or does the protocol change over time as you stay on DSIP for a long period of time?
No, not really.
Not so much a dependency, I'm sorry, an
Yeah.
immunity almost towards it. Does it stop working if you
Yes
take
and
it
no.
like, okay.
Yeah, yes and no. I think it's going to keep working. However, like as with most peptides, I like to rotate them and cycle them. Same with my diets. I don't think you should be doing it all the time, nor should you, because you can sometimes get some receptor desensitization. That happens with the growth hormone peptides. It can happen with DSIP too. So if you're doing it for months and months and months, it's possible that it could stop working. You hear about this all the time with a lot of the peptides. The GLPs, the Sermorelins, and so I like to. That's how I like to. That's how I've learned from some of the top minds in the space is really to rotate your peptides. And there's a timing, and there's even ways to align your peptide usage with circadian rhythms, and that I have a little protocol for that. So yeah, so I would say for a DSIP, use it for a few months, and then maybe take a break for a month. Kind of thing is a nice, easy way to think about it.
Just to,
You mentioned C-Link for some people who have trouble sleeping. Have you ever seen patients that stack DSIP with C-Link?
I've heard of people. I have not had any of my own patients do that, but I've heard of other people doing that. And it can be kind of a synergistic approach. Sea light, especially if someone's in like a high stress state, because the sea light really has that stress mitigating response, helps improve that GABA response and calming effect. So combine that with the DSIP, I think that'd be a nice combination. If someone's really anxious and stressed, I think that'd be a good combo for them.
Someone asked, can you please cover the typical dosing amount and schedule? So ours is 1 milligram per milliliter. That's our concentration. And we do 20 units, which is 200 micrograms, 5 days on, 2 days off. That's our doctor recommended protocol, followed by a 2 week break between repeating cycles. I mean, is that,
Yeah, I think you can. I think with the DSIP, I think less is better sometimes. I mean, most of the times I'll do like maybe 3 times a week. But could you do 5 days a week? Yeah, you could. With more frequent cycling, like you said, I think that's totally fine. Everybody's different. Most of the studies have looked at maybe 2, 3 times a week and then kind of doing it for a few months. Yeah, a couple, 100, 200 micrograms, I use, et cetera, is a kind of a standard dose, but everybody's a little bit different. Some people need to go higher or lower, but that's saying it seems like overall a good protocol.
Tiffany wrote, what time of day? I would assume before bed, right?
Before bed, but as I mentioned earlier, some people don't, and they have to take it during the day, which sounds weird, but some people who've tried it at night didn't work. They took it during the day, and now it works.
Mary wrote, sorry, I'm reading some of the comments that are coming in, so I hope you don't mind. I've jumped into FAQs. Can you combine DSIP with melatonin? It covered
Uh,
any.
yeah, you could. You could. I would start at a very low dose because it is augmenting your own melatonin production. So I would try it, and if you need it, say you're not, it's just not working. So you have a really high drive, and you're just not doing it. You could do it. You could do it. I would start with like, especially like an extended release melatonin. That'd probably be a good way to go.
Mm, so stagger. I don't quite understand. 3 hours. Overheard it's best taken 3 hours before bed. Okay. And
Yes.
is it safe to stack with other peptides, like if you're taking GLP-1s, NAD, any of these other peptides?
Yeah, definitely. I use a lot of peptides in conjunction, because they tend to do different things, right? Then they can all be stacked together. Not all of them. Be cautious with that because I've seen some people using like three different mitochondrial peptides at the same time, which is not a good idea. And they had bad things happen. So make sure you're working with someone who knows what they're talking about. But a lot of these, especially if they're different pathways, different purposes, absolutely fine because some of them are synergistic by reducing inflammation, reducing stress, improving sleep. So yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
Okay, so now I've been on DSIP for, let's say, a month. I'm getting deeper. So what can I expect? What are the results of this? What does deeper sleep mean overall when it comes to longevity and health?
Yeah, I mean, if your deep sleep is improving, that's fantastic for your health and longevity. I think everybody's an N of one. You're, in other words, an experiment of one. So I would, if you do it, I would track it and see how you're feeling. Like, why'd you do it in the first place? What were the symptoms, problems, metrics you were tracking, and compare that to afterwards. Just like anything, how does your mood? How's your sex drive? How's your exercise performance? How's your mental performance? How's your interpersonal relationships? How's your weight? How are you feeling in general? If you have an aura or a whoop, how are your metrics, showing? As with everything, measure everything and track it, whether you're doing a new diet, a new peptide, anything, see what works. If nothing's changing or it's going the wrong direction, then it's not for you, no matter what the data says. If everybody's like, you could be on wonder drug, but if it doesn't work for you, then it doesn't work for you, don't do it. So, but you don't know if you don't assess yourself. So keep a log, keep a journal, track things and follow it along and see how you respond.
Hmm. Lauren, do you have any additional questions?
I guess
Or
my last to address, I know we talked about, this is an alternative therapy to traditional sleeping drugs and melatonin with the, more neutral supplements like magnesium glycinate. Would you recommend someone taking it with magnesium, or is this again another alternative for that?
I think, no, you definitely could. I mean, I think most people are magnesium deficient. I have pretty much all my patients on magnesium. So I think it's magnesium is not going to make you groggy. It does facilitate sleep, but it also helps with recovery and so many other functions in the body and the metabolism and the brain. I think it'd be great to use together. Theanine, same kind of thing. It has many beneficial effects. And again, it's not going to make you groggy per se, but it does kind of make you calm, has some immune system stimulating effects. So those are great. I use those two together all the time for a lot of my patients, but throwing this on with DSIP would be totally fine.
Dr. Fate, before we wrap up, do you have any final words and tips and tricks and any word for our audience when it comes to longevity and wellness and health? Do you have any last final words?
Well,
What can we do to
yeah.
optimize?
Well, thank you again. And everybody had great questions and it was a lot of fun. So I think as with everything, keep it simple. Make sure you work with, a clinician, someone who's trained and understands it. Don't just buy stuff willy-nilly and just but on the flip side, you still have to, like I said, you're an N of one. So always start with the basics. Try to get back to nature. Try to get outside more. Get off the devices at night. Just try to chill, relax. Don't get too stressed about things, and just work with great groups like you guys, and work, clinicians like myself. Just seek help, and just relax and enjoy the ride. And just at the end of the day, we can only do the best which we can. There's things we can control, things we can't control, and the ones you can't control, let it go. And my
Mm.
overarching message on all my things is all the time is my whole thing is like live to give. That's why I want my patients to feel good about themselves so they can help other people feel good. So I want everybody to live to give, feel good, and then give it back and pass it forward to everybody else. And hopefully they'll pass it forward. And we can all do our part to make this world a better place.
I love that. And if we want to find you, Jody Rowe, where can I find you? What's your contact information? If we want to find you, where is the best place we could get in touch with you?
Yeah, Dr. Eric Fate Prime X. I've got tons of social media content. I've got tons of free content, so feel free to stalk my YouTubes and my socials. But drericprimex.com is my main site. I just actually just redid my website, so I got a lot of stuff there
Mhm.
and the VIP program, and I do telemedicine all across the country. I've got my license in, gosh, I don't know, almost 40 states now. So, and I just work with my patients one-on-one. I spend a ton of time with them. I've got a lot of cool advanced protocols in terms of health and performance optimization and my trademark muscle medicine approach. So drericprimex.com. But like I said, check out all my socials. Feel free to watch all my free stuff. So
Brenda, if you could please drop it in the show notes and in the messages if possible, so we can follow Dr. Eric Fate. Thank you so much for coming on
yeah,
and educating our community. This was outstanding. Thank you.
yeah,
We
absolutely.
so appreciate you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you having me on. You ladies are doing an amazing job. So keep up the good work. And if I can help and be of service in any way, let me know.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And thank you guys for tuning in and joining us and educating yourself and really taking your part and being part of our beautiful community. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful evening. We'll see you next week. Take care. Thank you, Dr. Eric.
Thank you.
Take
Bye,
care.
everybody.
Bye, everyone.